What if Christmas wasn't about comfort, but about courage? In a season that begs us to be quiet, to stay agreeable, to keep the peace at all costs. Charlie Kirk dares to ask a more unsettling question. What are you willing to stand for when silence feels safer? This isn't a gentle holiday reflection, it's a confrontation with fear, apathy, and the stories we tell ourselves to avoid action. Like every meaningful reckoning, it begins with tension. Between belief and belonging, truth and approval, Christmas in this telling is not an escape. It is an invitation to choose bravery over ease, conviction over comfort. Now, somewhere along the way, comfort stopped being a luxury and started becoming a belief system. We don't just enjoy comfort anymore, we defend it. We organize our lives around it. We treat it like something sacred. If an idea makes us uneasy, we reject it. If the truth costs us approval, we soften it. If standing up creates tension, we back down and call it wisdom, and we tell ourselves we're being kind or strategic or patient, when, in reality, we're just being comfortable. That's the world we're living in right now, a world where being liked matters more than being right, where peace is confused with silence, where people would rather keep their seats at the table than risk flipping it over comfort, has become our new religion, and like every false religion, it demands sacrifice. It asks you to sacrifice conviction. It asks you to sacrifice courage. Eventually, it asks you to sacrifice the truth. Here's the thing. Comfort never changed history. Comfort never ended. Injustice, comfort never built a strong nation, a strong family, or a strong faith. Every meaningful moment of progress came from people who were willing to be uncomfortable. People who were willing to say, this isn't working. Even when everyone else told them to keep quiet and go along. And Christmas of all seasons exposes this contradiction. We celebrate a story that began in discomfort. No palace, no applause, no safety net, just obedience, risk and faith in the middle of uncertainty. And yet today, we want the message without the cost. We want the inspiration without the inconvenience. We want the symbolism without the sacrifice. We've trained ourselves to avoid friction at all costs, to smooth over disagreements, to stay vague instead of bold, to choose applause over backbone. But when comfort becomes the highest value, courage becomes a threat, and when courage is treated like a threat, truth doesn't stand a chance. Let me be clear, this isn't about being angry or loud for the sake of it. This is about having the spine to live what you say you believe. It's about refusing to outsource your convictions to polls, trends, or social pressure. It's about understanding that a quiet lie is still a lie, and a comfortable silence can still do real damage. The reason so many people feel lost right now isn't because they lack information. It's because they've been taught to trade courage for comfort over and over again, and every trade makes it harder to recognize themselves in the mirror. So tonight I'm asking something simple, but not easy. Stop worshiping comfort. Stop treating inconvenience like oppression. Stop confusing ease with goodness, because the moment you choose comfort over conviction, someone else pays the price. And here's the truth. We can't avoid any longer if we don't have the courage to be uncomfortable. Now we won't recognize the cost when it's too late. After comfort comes something even more dangerous. Silence. Because silence feels harmless. Silence feels polite. Silence lets us sleep at night. We tell ourselves, I'm staying out of it. Or I don't want to cause division. Or now's not the right time. But here's the truth we don't like admitting. Silence is never neutral. It never was. Every time you choose not to speak, you're still making a choice, and that choice always benefits someone. We've been sold the idea that staying quiet makes us reasonable, mature, above the chaos, but silence doesn't rise above anything. It settles into whatever already exists. When something is wrong, and you say nothing, the wrong doesn't pause, it doesn't reflect, it doesn't improve, it grows, it gains confidence, it learns that no one is going to stop it. History doesn't remember silence kindly. It never has. The darkest chapters weren't written only by villains. They were enabled by millions of quiet, decent people who convinced themselves their voice wouldn't matter or that someone else would speak up. Silence didn't protect them. It didn't save their reputations. It didn't spare them regret. And today, silence has been rebranded as kindness, as tolerance, as wisdom. We're told that speaking clearly is divisive, that drawing lines is dangerous, that calling things what they are is somehow cruel. But avoiding truth doesn't create unity. It creates confusion. And confusion is the perfect environment for fear to thrive. Let's be honest. Most silence isn't about peace. It's about fear. Fear of losing friends. Fear of being labeled. fear of being misunderstood, fear of standing alone, and that fear whispers a very convincing lie. If you stay quiet, you'll be safe. But safety bought with silence is temporary, and it always comes with a cost, because when you stay silent long enough, you don't just lose your voice, you lose your clarity. You start adjusting your beliefs to match your quiet. You stop recognizing when something crosses a line because you've been stepping back inch by inch. Silence doesn't just hide truth from others, it slowly hides it from you. And Christmas reminds us of something uncomfortable here too, that the truth entered the world quietly, but it was never meant to stay silent. It disrupted, it challenged, it forced people to choose, and people still had the same options we have today. Ignore it, dismiss it, or respond with courage. No one is asking you to shout at strangers or burn bridges recklessly, but there is a difference between being wise and being silent. There is a difference between grace and retreat, and there are moments, real moments, when not speaking is the loudest message you send. So if you're waiting for a safer time, a quieter moment, a perfect opportunity, this is it, because the longer we pretend silence is neutral, the louder the consequences become. And here's the line we have to stop crossing. When silence feels easier than truth, it's already costing us more than we think. Once you break free from comfort, once you refuse to hide behind silence, you run straight into the hardest part of all, belonging. Because courage doesn't usually cost you strangers. It costs you people you know, people you laugh with, people whose approval once felt essential. Real courage doesn't test your strength in public, it tests your loyalty in private. We all want to belong. That's not weakness, it's human. We want community, connection, acceptance, but somewhere along the way we were taught that belonging must come at the price of agreement. That if you challenge the group, you risk exile, so we learn to self-censor. We learn to nod instead of speak. We learn which truths are safe and which ones are better left unspoken if we want to stay included. Here's the uncomfortable reality. The moment you decide to live honestly, belonging becomes conditional. You will feel it. The room gets quieter, the invitations slow down, the tone shifts. Suddenly you're that person, not because you became extreme, but because you stop pretending. And that's where courage actually begins. Not when everyone cheers you on, not when the cost is low. Courage begins when telling the truth might cost you your place in the room. When standing firm means standing alone, when you realize that fitting in and standing up are rarely the same thing. The pressure to belong is powerful. It tells you to soften your words, to compromise just a little, to wait until later. But compromise has a way of stacking up. One concession becomes a habit. One moment of silence becomes a pattern. And before you know it, you're surrounded by people who know a version of you that isn't fully real. And Christmas confronts us with this tension too. The story we celebrate wasn't embraced by the culture. It disrupted it. It divided households. It forced choices, and not everyone was comfortable with what it demanded. Belonging was never guaranteed. But truth was, here's what I've learned. If your beliefs only survive when everyone agrees with you, they weren't convictions, they were accessories. Conviction is what remains when approval disappears. It's what anchors you when the applause fades and the cost becomes personal. That doesn't mean you become cold or isolated. It means you choose integrity over popularity. It means you understand that real community isn't built on silence. It's built on shared courage. And sometimes the people you lose make room for the people you were meant to stand with all along. So if you feel that tension right now, that pull between being accepted and being honest, you're not failing, you're standing at the doorway of courage. And what you do next matters, because the truth is simple, and it cuts deep. If belonging requires you to betray what you believe, it was never worth keeping. After all of that, after choosing discomfort over ease, after breaking the habit of silence, after risking belonging, you're left with one unavoidable question. What do you actually do with what you believe? Because belief that never moves past words isn't belief at all. It's decoration. It looks good for a season, but it doesn't hold weight when pressure shows up. We are very good at seasonal conviction. We know how to post the right words at the right time. We know how to celebrate values when they're popular, safe, and expected. Especially around Christmas, we talk about faith, family, sacrifice, truth. We sing about light overcoming darkness. And for a few weeks, it all feels meaningful. But then January comes and the courage disappears. See, it's easy to honor values when they were ceremonial, when they cost nothing, when no one pushes back. But the moment belief demands action, real action, we hesitate. We delay, we say we'll get to it later. We convince ourselves that intention is enough, that agreement is the same thing as obedience. It's not faith that stays theoretical, doesn't change anything. It doesn't shape culture. It doesn't protect what matters. It doesn't resist what's wrong. And eventually it starts to shrink. Because beliefs you don't practice slowly lose their power over you. What makes this so dangerous is that we don't notice it happening. We still say the right things, we still claim the values, but our lives tell a quieter story, a story of avoidance, of waiting, of hoping someone else will carry the weight, so we don't have to. And Christmas confronts that hypocrisy head-on. The message we celebrate didn't stay symbolic. It showed up in flesh and blood, it moved, it acted, it disrupted. It didn't just inspire, it demanded response. And that's the part we struggle with most. Because action is inconvenient. Action invites criticism. Action exposes whether we really believe what we say, or whether we just like how it sounds. Action forces us to choose between comfort and consistency. Here's the truth. Values only matter when they cost you something, when they shape your decisions, when they influence how you speak, how you vote, how you raise your kids, how you show up when it would be easier not to. Anything less is just seasonal enthusiasm, and I don't say that to shame anyone. I say it because this moment matters. We don't need louder slogans. We don't need better branding. We need people willing to live what they claim long after the decorations come down, because a belief that only exists in December won't sustain you in March, and a faith that never moves your feet won't stand when the ground starts shaking. So here's the line we have to cross together. If we're not willing to act on what we believe when it's inconvenient, then we never really believed it at all. After action comes another fear we don't talk about enough. The fear of being alone, because once you start acting on what you believe, once you stop hiding behind comfort and silence, there's a moment where it feels like you're the only one standing. And fear loves that moment. Fear isolates. It whispers, you're on your own. No one else sees this. No one else is willing to risk it. And if fear can convince you that you're alone, it can stop you in your tracks. That's how fear works best. In isolation. It doesn't need to overpower you. It just needs to separate you, to make you think your voice is too small. Your stand doesn't matter. Your courage won't change anything. And too many people give up, not because they don't care, but because they think they're the only ones who do. But here's the truth. Fear doesn't want you to realize courage is contagious. It always has been. People are watching quietly, carefully, waiting for someone else to go first, so they don't have to stand alone. Most people don't lack conviction. They lack confirmation. They're asking themselves, am I crazy for thinking this? And one act of courage answers that question louder than 1,000 speeches. Community isn't born from comfort. It's born from shared risk. Real community forms when people stop pretending and start standing when someone speaks, and enough. says, you're not wrong when one person takes a step, and others realize they don't have to walk alone after all that. Why isolation is such a powerful weapon. It keeps good people quiet. It keeps truth fragmented. It keeps courage rare. But the moment courage is seen, really seen, it multiplies. Fear retreats when it realizes it's outnumbered. And Christmas reminds us of this too. The story didn't begin with a crowd. It began with a few people willing to believe, willing to move, willing to trust. A small group, ordinary people, but they weren't alone. And neither are we. We were never meant to carry conviction in isolation. We were meant to carry it together. That doesn't mean consensus. It doesn't mean uniformity. It means solidarity and truth. It means knowing that even when you feel alone, you're part of something larger than yourself, something worth standing for. So, if you've been holding back because you think no one will stand with you, hear this clearly. Someone is waiting for you to speak so they know it's safe to speak too. Someone is watching to see if courage still exists in the real world, not just in words. Fear wants you isolated. Courage builds community. And the moment you step forward, you might be surprised how many step forward with you, because here's the reality. Fear can't survive. You were never meant to stand alone. And once courage shows up, it never does. And that brings us to the moment we're standing in right now, not someday, not eventually, now. Because moments like this don't announce themselves with sirens or countdowns. They don't wait for you to feel ready. They pass quietly, and only later do people realize what they missed. We like to believe there will always be another chance, another election, another conversation, another generation to fix what we were afraid to confront. But history doesn't work that way. Windows close lines get crossed, and what once felt reversible becomes. The most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is, I'll speak up later. Later is how courage dies. Every era has its test, and the test is never obvious while you're taking it. It just feels inconvenient, awkward, risky. It feels like something you could put off until things calm down. But they don't. They never do. And one day you wake up and realize the cost of inaction is higher than the cost of courage ever was. This moment won't ask again. It won't send reminders. It won't slow down so everyone can catch up. It's happening whether we engage or not, and choosing not to choose is still a choice, with consequences that don't care about your intentions. I know it's tempting to believe that staying quiet, staying agreeable, staying comfortable will somehow protect you. but it never has the things that matter most. Truth, freedom, faith, responsibility are never preserved by passivity. They survive because ordinary people decide that this line matters, that this value matters, that this moment matters enough to act. And here's the hardest part. No one can make that decision for you. Not leaders, not institutions, not movements. It comes down to individuals deciding whether they'll be remembered for their courage or explained away by their silence. Christmas reminds us that timing matters, that obedience delayed is obedience denied, that waiting for the perfect moment is often just another way of saying, no, the story we celebrate wasn't convenient, it was urgent, and it demanded response. So don't underestimate what you do next. Don't assume someone else will carry the weight. Don't convince yourself that your voice, your stand, your courage doesn't matter. It does more than you know, especially now. Because years from now, when people ask what was done in this moment, I stayed comfortable, won't sound like wisdom. It will sound like regret. And the truth we can't escape is this: history doesn't remember who waited. It remembers who stood when it mattered most. This Christmas isn't asking for tradition. It's demanding courage, not the comfortable kind we talk about, but the costly kind we avoid in a world addicted to silence, approval, and ease. This message cuts through the noise with an uncomfortable truth. Neutrality is no longer an option when values are mocked, truth is pressured, and conviction is treated like a liability. Staying quiet is no longer wisdom, it's surrender. This is not about politics or popularity. It's about a defining moment that won't come back. History is watching, culture is shifting, and the question is painfully simple. When courage was required, did you stand or did you stay comfortable?